Hello and welcome back to day 2 of Devex at COP26. I'm Kate Warren here with UK correspondent Will Worley. We're coming to you from the Blue Zone, which is where all of the official meetings are taking place, a wide range of side events, all kinds of activity happening here. We're actually in the action zone, you could say, in the heart of the action. But excited to kick off today's program. We'll be bringing you some conversations with some of the leaders that are here today. Before we get started, just a quick note, if you are joining via Zoom, there is access to interpretation in French and Spanish, as well as closed captioning. You can access that at the bottom of the screen. I do want to thank our partners who made this coverage possible. So we have our Innovation and Ecosystem Partner, DAI UK, as well as ecosystem partners, AGRA, Catapult, Center for Disease Protection, ESRI, and RTI International, and our underwriter, FHI 360. So thank you for your support. But Will, we're here in the Action Zone. There's all kinds of side events, activities happening, but even outside of here, there are other events, that we've been learning about day by day. There's a biodiversity summit happening today. There was a separate climate summit earlier this week, all kinds of private dinners, events. Do you get a sense that all this activity is a good thing and is helping to make progress, or that there are maybe a lot of different siloed conversations and people are kind of not necessarily talking with each other, but side by side?
I think it depends on who you speak to and who will people will have a lot of different takes on it. There is the impression that COP is a coming together of many different minds, and people naturally fall into different interests, but it's also about making different kind of connections across spheres. It's probably quite difficult to tell how all these different groups are working together and what connections will be made. Many of those will not necessarily be public, but it's interesting to note that there's also been a lot of announcements and sectoral agreements from governments, from institutions, kind of almost in parallel to what's been going on in the negotiations itself, and those announcements alone have kept everybody very, very busy.
Right, and so, last night the cover text of the agreement came out. Can you talk a little bit about what that means, what that is, for our audience is not as familiar with how the COP proceedings go, and any early impressions on that?
Sure. So this is basically the first draft of the agreement. That will be the kind of the Glasgow agreement. So it's a pretty wide-ranging text, but it's also important to note there are still 3 days left to go. This is what everything is going to be. It's all going to be fought over. There's about 200 parties here, almost 200 parties, excuse me. So that's a lot of different interests kind of competing for what they want in it. So the language, as we see it now, which is available online, will not be the same by the end of the week. But there were a lot of different points in that. There's been a call particularly for annual climate pledges. So instead of coming together for renewed climate ambition every 5 years, many countries want to see that happen on a more annual basis for increased ambition. But of most relevance to Devex viewers is probably the point on adaptation finance. There has been a big uptake of adaptation finance on the agenda at this COP. The cover text notes with serious concern that the current provision of climate finance for adaptation is insufficient to respond to the worsening climate change impacts in developing country parties, and it calls for more financing for adaptation. A second really important point, I think, is also loss and damage. Now, there was a whole section dedicated to loss and damage in this text, which is really important, but also the language compared to especially some of what we saw on adaptation financing, the language is pretty weak, and a lot of people won't be especially happy with that, and who knows how that's going to look by the end of the week.
Yeah, so today we will be having discussions on carbon trading, on climate and tech, but we're also bringing some conversations with some of the leaders that are here in the room that are actively part of these discussions and negotiations. So what are some of the conversations you're looking forward to today?
I'm looking forward to speaking with Hindu Umuru Ibrahim, who is an indigenous rights activist from Chad. I think she's going to be fascinating. I think everyone at home will be really interested to hear what she has to say. Salim ul Haq, who is also very much involved, a very vocal climate justice advocate from Bangladesh. He heads up a think tank unit there. But we've also got some leaders coming up, Priti Sinha from the UN CDF, the UN Capital Development Fund, talking more to the financial piece. And we have Asif Saleh, head of BRAC, the largest NGO in the world. So I think some really interesting stuff for Devex viewers.
Great. Well, I look forward to the conversations, and we'll stay tuned. Thanks.